Well, hello again, BookTube. So, one of the videos that I've been wanting to make, but I haven't really figured out how I would structure that or how I would go about doing that, is a video about what I've been reading, what I have recently read, and what I would like to read going forward. So, I've figured out sort of how that structure would go, and I would see how that works and see if it's actually something that interests people about what I'm currently reading. So right now I have three books that I'm currently reading, but I'll go through them and why I'm reading them, and hopefully at some point I can maybe make a video about them on their own and give you more details about my thoughts once I'm done reading them. And the first book is Plato, the Last Days of Socrates. So this is my first ever time reading Plato, and it's just one of those short ones. As you see, I'm not very far. It's one of those short works of Plato, or a collection of short works. So this includes the Euthyphro, the Apology, Crito, and Phaedo, and it's translated by Hugh Trenedict. Trenedenic. And this is my first time trying Plato. I've been really wanting to actually read Plato for a while now, and this is my actual start. And again, I'll point out that I have not gotten very far, and there's a reason for that, which I'll explain a little bit later on. But Plato is part of my Western Canon reading list project, which has gone a lot slower than I thought it would. Reading, I finished Thucydides earlier this year. If you haven't seen my video on that, and Thucydides took me quite a while to read. One, because I'm a slow reader, and two, because uh, I've been quite busy with school and other things, and other books do grasp my attention too that end up distracting me. So, and that's also the case with this, which is why for such a short work, I have not gotten very far in it yet, and can't say I've gotten very far enough to determine whether or not I like Plato or if I really understand what he's trying to do. And then the next book is actually on my e-reader. This is called This Beauty, A Philosophy of Being Alive. That's the cover there. And it's by Nick Riggle. And this is a really short book that where he goes through a philosophy of life, but he divides it up into 4 or 5 sections, and if you can't really see that, but he puts that on the cover there, where the first chapter is about this life, second chapter is this body, third chapter this day, this time, and these people. And for an ebook, my e-copy only has about 119 or 120 pages, give or take, and it's just a short reflection on his life and what it means to be alive. And with these types of books do interest me, but with these types of books, you can get a lot of a mixed bag of reactions to them, because on one hand, for every interesting thing or insightful thing that he says, he will say probably 2 or 3 things that are either obvious or downright um, dumb or nonsensical. And that's why I've stalled with this book too, even though it's so short. I'm about halfway through, and I can't say that he's really compelled me to want to finish it, really, though I will certainly finish it. I'm not going to DNF it, but he hasn't really compelled me to finish it. So it's just kind of sitting there on my bed table, and when I have a moment or two, I'll pick it up and read a few pages, but he doesn't compel me to go back and eagerly read what he has to say on philosophy of life. But that the whole concept of a philosophy of life does, in fact, interest me a lot, though it can sound quite pretentious and well, highbrow just by saying it. For me, I think, and I do appreciate his approach to going on, because I don't think he is going about it as like a pretentious academic philosopher who thinks they're smarter than everyone else and that their life is full of deep complexities that are absent from your common, I don't know, blue collar worker. I don't get that impression from this book. I just find that some of his reflections don't really add up, and they don't make a ton of sense. Though there is some value that I've found from it so far. But that's normally been earlier on in the book. And then the third book is the reason why these other two books have been stalled, and it's, for those who know will know why. It's Anthony Trollope's Barchester Towers, and this is the longer book, certainly the longest book on the list. I'm halfway through, as you see. And Trollope, this is my second Trollope. I've read The Warden last year, and I quite enjoyed it. And I heard a lot of good things about the Barchester Towers, and so I was eager to pick it up. And I picked it up earlier this month on a whim because I quite like. Well, I needed a, I don't know if you call it a palate cleanser, but I needed something light or lighter or something that I knew that I would enjoy, and Trollope just seemed like a perfect candidate for that, and so I picked him up and started reading him. And he's great company, and there's not much I can say about Trollope that if you haven't tried Trollope, you should try him too, because I love his authorial presence on the page, where he is he's telling you this story, and it's almost like he's, I don't know if you've seen the movies of those movies of the Dickens novel, The Christmas Carol, where you have like the ghost. I forget which ghost it was, but he grabs Scrooge by the hand, and he's kind of floating around through time and showing different aspects of Scrooge's life, and that's what it feels like with Trollope. When Trollope is he's like taking the reader by the hand, and he's floating you to these different stages of these characters' lives. And this book is about a religious controversy between um, characters that were previously known in the Warden. So we got Mr. Harding, who lost his wardenship because of a scandal, and we have Dr. Grantley, who's the Archdeacon of Barchester, and he's like a firecracker of a religious character, in the sense that he is a strong-willed person who likes to get his way, but he's also um, a, a good character in the sense that he is faithfully religious, but he is um, very opinionated and strong-willed, and he is also the um, son-in-law to Mr. Harding, because he married Mr. Harding's older daughter. But then we also have the scandal is a new bishop to the religious community, and the bishop is basically a noodle of a personality where he has got no spine, and he's completely influenced and entrapped either by his wife, Mrs. Prouty, or his chaplain, who is Mr. Slope. So Mr. Slope is another um, a religious figure too, who is basically his right hand man to the bishop. But Mr. Slope controls the bishop through his ambition and his forceful personality, and Mrs. Prouty is the wife of the bishop, and basically Mr. Slope and the bishop are Mrs. Prouty and Mr. Slope are battling it out between each other, who will be the unofficial real bishop of Barchester, based on their influence and sway over Mr. Prouty. And then Dr. Grantley and Mr. Harding are completely against the entire new faction of Mr. Slope and Mrs. Prouty, and they're trying to get rid of them, or at least uh, somehow mitigate their negative influence, or what they see as their negative influence on the community. Because if you read The Warden, Dr. Grant or Mr. Grantley's, I think it's Dr. Grantley, Archdeacon Grantley, anyways, it was his father that was the previous bishop before he passed away, and we get a glimpse of that in the previous book, but Archdeacon Grantley wanted to be the deacon or the bishop himself. And I find Trollope quite enjoyable, and I think though one of the questions that I've gone into when reading Trollope is why Trollope is less known as an author than Dickens. Because I've read Charles Dickens, I've read one of his books actually, just one, but it was Great Expectations, and I have not read any of his others, though I'm familiar with the stories, because how can you not be when you're interested in those kinds of books? I do have a lot of copies of them though, but I just have not sat down and read another one since I've read Great Expectations. And I was wondering, going through Trollope, why, for example, Trollope is lesser known than Dickens, when, at least from comparing the experience of Great Expectations, which I've heard from a lot of Dickens fans is basically like a quintessential Dickens novel. And, you know, if you like that one, then you'll like all of Dickens, or at least most of Dickens, or just how Dickens is as a writer. And I was trying to compare the two. Why Trollope is lesser known when him and Dickens were basically doing similar things at the same time. And I wonder if it's because, I mean, this book was the book that shot Trollope into popularity, and I wonder if it's because of the subject matter. Because Dickens' novels are very, or at least from reading Great Expectations and then knowing the basic plot points of the other famous books like David Copperfield, Oliver Twist, Hard Times, and I'm blanking on the other few famous ones, but a lot of them are like social commentaries and based off of concerns that would afflict his, or at least interest his readership a lot more than Trollope. Where Trollope, I mean, I'm enjoying this book, but halfway through, there's a lot of not theological arguing, but a lot of very religious observances and religious infighting between different levels of the hierarchy of the English Church, and I don't know how much of an interest that would be to, or how much that would be an interest to more readers than, say, books on poor figures who are the victims of this new industrial system that's been introduced in Britain, and all these different, or go through a ton of egregious suffering and come out at the end either the better for it or for the worse. And I don't know, like religious infighting between a bunch of different religious figures does not seem as compelling, even though this was popular, and it should be. It's a great book from what I've read so far. I don't know how it's going to end, but I have no doubt in Trollope's confidence in being able to end a story like this, and I certainly hope to read more of the Barchester series. Yeah, it's called Barchester Chronicles of Barchester. That's the word I was looking for. But yeah, and I'll need to read some more Dickens as well to weigh Trollope against Dickens and really see where that popularity is coming from, because even on BookTube you see a lot of people who have these personal goals of reading all of Dickens, but you hardly ever hear anyone say that about Trollope. And Trollope wrote just as many novels, if not more, than Dickens, and you know, if Trollope writes like this more often, you'd think that he's just as enjoyable as Dickens, if not more. So, I don't know. That's just some of my thoughts on that, and that's why I'm stalling and falling behind on these. Chances are I'll just end up finishing Trollope, and then I'll go back to these and see what I can make of them. And then I want to move on to a book that I recently finished, and I haven't thought about whether or not I should do a single standalone video on this book. I don't know if it really deserves it, but I'll mention it here, The Peloponnesian War by Donald Kagan. And this is a big book on the Peloponnesian War, which, if you recognize, I read Thucydides just a few months ago, or a month or two ago. And Thucydides is the primary source material for the Peloponnesian War in ancient Greece, where you have Athens fighting against Sparta, and how it overturns all of the Greek world because it drags on for almost 30 years. And my intention of picking this up was to get another perspective on the Peloponnesian War that we don't get in Thucydides, because Thucydides does have his own opinions and his own perspective when it comes to the Peloponnesian War, and we do have other sources that correlate with what Thucydides says or contradicts or adds more detail. So we got at least a few more sources, even though Thucydides is the most famous one. So what I was hoping this book would do would be presenting not only what Thucydides wrote, but presenting a different aspect or more detail, or fleshing out what actually happened in a broader perspective. And I would say I was largely disappointed with that. This book was not at all like that, and instead it was more just Donald Kagan summarizing and rephrasing everything that Thucydides says himself, and then adding maybe a few added details here and there, but not enough to keep it interesting or make it think it's worthwhile for someone who's already read Thucydides. And the only reason why I did not stop reading this book is because Thucydides famously stops before the end of the Peloponnesian War, so we have another 8 years, 7 or 8 years of the war that we don't get if you read just Thucydides. So for the last probably 90 pages of this book was stuff you don't actually get in Thucydides, and so he has to turn to other sources for those details. And that's, I did appreciate those, and it does bring the war to a close for me after having read Thucydides. But I don't know, I just felt like he was rephrasing Thucydides, and he wasn't really adding anything extra or interesting to say to the war. And that surprised me, considering that this author wrote a massive scholarly 4-volume book in excruciating detail on the Peloponnesian War back in the 70s and 80s. And this book was published in 2004. So you think this would have been the perfect scholar to write a 1-volume history of adding a lot of context and interesting information on that time period, but he really doesn't. And so I'm glad I read it in a sense, but I don't think I was the intended audience. I think what this book more is trying to do is to introduce you to the Peloponnesian War, if, for one, you will never read Thucydides and you have no interest in reading Thucydides, or if you want to, or trying to convince you that maybe you want to read Thucydides and you find this interesting and you want to go back to the source material yourself. So I would consider that if you're in that narrow group of people, then this would be a good book to pick up and see if you end up liking it. But if you've already read Thucydides and and that wasn't enough for you, then you really don't need to read this book on the subject. And so that was a recent read. I do have another recent read on my e-reader that I won't bother to bring up because I actually don't have a cover for it on here, but it's The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, and I'm blanking on the author. Forgot to write down the author's name, but it's a famous book. Everyone should be easy to find online if you just typed in the title. And that was just a short novel on about a young boy named Bruno who grew up in uh, Nazi Germany, and his father becomes a commanding officer, or like the leading officer of a camp, or one of those concentration camps, and his family has to move from Berlin to this new camp, and he doesn't understand why, and he has a weird relationship with this, or he has a distant relationship with his father, because his father is like this military, strong, highly respected military figure, and he's just a 9-year-old kid who likes to hang out with his friends and uh, I don't know, play around in the house and bug his older sister. And I won't spoil the book because there is a twist at the end, but he ends up making a friend in this concentration camp, a boy who's his same age but who's on the other side of the fence. So a Jewish prisoner but he doesn't understand that he's a Jewish prisoner. And so every day they meet at this same part of in the fence. They're on each different side of the fence, and they just talk. And it's a short book, and it's a quick read, but I really did not like this book. And there's a main reason why that is, and it's because Bruno, as a young 9-year-old figure, is not at all like an actual 9-year-old who's the son of a commander of a concentration camp would at all be like. Bruno is basically a 21st century kid who is imported into Nazi Germany and has all the same opinions and same thoughts and all these 21st century reactions to Nazi Germany as, say, someone today would. Because he's not part of the Hitler Youth, which was a huge thing. And if you're gonna be like, he actually meets Hitler in this book because his father is that high ranking, and his father gets a promotion by Hitler, and it's it. The author includes a lot of gimmicks like that, but then completely um, has the reactions completely predictable. That's the word. It's very predictable, and you just know what's all gonna come. And even that twist in the end is not at all believable, because historically that's not how uh, those kinds of things happened. I'm not gonna hint to it, but it's just not a very historical book, and obviously it's not trying to be, but I think it completely undermines itself in that sense, because it it's not at all what you would not at all nuanced or anything. It's more just a gimmicky book, I guess you would say. And I see that I'm already at over 20 minutes, and I've only been rambling about what I've read and what I've been reading. I'll quickly go through some books that I would like to read. And first off, I'll say that I am a slow reader, so what I show here could probably take me 2 months to read, give or take how busy I am. And so I'll just go through them quickly. And because I'm reading Plato, and because he's part of my Western Canon reading list, and I'll reference anyone who does not know what that is to watch some of my previous videos. Probably a year ago already, I made a couple of videos on the Western Canon reading list. Maybe, if people are interested, I might redo one of those videos, because one of them is extremely long, and the other one, I had a terrible camera, and you probably see about 4 pixels throughout the entire video. And I'm not saying this camera is much better, maybe 6 or 7 pixels. Anyways, so I have more Plato on my list, and this is Gorgias, and it's another short book, but this is only the one dialogue with called Georgius instead of the 4 that's in that other volume. And then I would plan to read It's the great dialogues of Plato, but I would only want to read the Symposium, which is in here. Though this includes the entire, includes a couple of them. Includes the entire of Meno, Ion, Symposium, the Republic, the Apology, Credo, Phaedo, and that's it. So that's quite a lot to include in here, but I just want to read the Symposium because and this is translated by W.H.D. Rouse, a translation from the 50s. This translation here is by Walter Hamilton and Chris Emmelyn Jones, which was published in the 60s. And the reason why I'm only reading the Symposium in this volume is because of the Penguin Classic of the Republic. And if you are, or if you've an older subscriber, or if you watch some of my older videos, about 10 months ago I did make a video about books I wanted to read in 2023, and these were all included on that list, and I still have not got to them, and have only recently started Plato, which tells you just how slow my Western canon reading list has really gone. And I'm not terribly happy about that, but it's the way it is, because other things just attract my attention, and I want to enjoy what I read, and I don't want to push it, because I know that I'm just going to end up resenting it, and I can't say that has been the case, though my patience has been tried. And that's good, because that means I'm growing as a reader. And this next book goes along with all that talk of Plato and of Thucydides and the Peloponnesian War, because I have the Oxford History of Greece and the Hellenistic World. This is a gem that I found used. As you can see, it's been well read, with the creases. And this is just exactly what that is. It's a companion history on Greek and Hellenistic history. And it's edited by 3 scholars, John Boardman, Jesper Griffin, and Oswin Murray. And basically what it is a collection of 16 essays. 16 essays written by different scholars on different aspects of Greek and Hellenistic time period. So you've got actual history of the archaic period, then you got a chapter on Homer, a chapter on Greek myth, a chapter on poetry and philosophy, and then you move into the classical period, and then you got drama, history, or the Greek historians, a life and society in classical Greece, and it goes on like that all the way into the Hellenistic world. And my plan was to read this alongside reading Plato, though if this ends up being a dry reading experience, I don't know how well that will go, but I'm up for it. And I do actually own the volume like this on Rome as well, so once I get into the Roman period of literature, I would like to end up reading that, but that won't be for a while. So I just have that one for now, and then I have 2 novels that I would like to read. And the first one is The Go-Between by L.P. Hartley. This has been a book that's been on my list for quite a while already, and it's a fascinating story. It's, from what I understand, it's about a boy who gets caught between a tortured love affair between 2 adults, and I think he's the boy who's bringing these notes between, like, exchanging notes between these 2 lovers, and he gets to experience it firsthand, this love affair between the 2 by exchanging notes, because it's somehow forbidden or something like that. Let's see if the back says. Yeah, it's about an old man looking back on his boyhood and recalls the summer of a Norfolk country house at the beginning of the century. Not yet equipped to understand the behavior of adults, he is guiltily involved in a tragic drama between 3 grown-up people. Okay, so there's a third adult here. The author forcefully conveys the intensity of an emotional experience which breeds a lasting mistrust of life. And it's a short thing, though it's under 300 pages, but the words are quite small. So, but I've sampled the first page or two of this before, and I really like the tone of that first few pages. So this is a strong contender. And then the next novel is Catch 22 by Joseph Heller. And I shouldn't need to introduce this book because chances are everyone has already read it. But it's from what I understand, it's a war novel, and it's a very comedic novel about contradictions and whatnot in war and um, in fighting, where you get the phrase "catch 22," and that's really all I know about it. Other than that, it's been on my shelf for a while, and it is a longer book, over 500 pages. Nope, I'm wrong. It's actually just over. It's 450. But the one reason why I've been held back about reading this is because I'm told that it jumps around a bit in the timeline, and so maybe you need to work a little bit extra to actually um, enjoy this novel. And I'm willing to do that, but only at certain times in my life, not where I'm super busy and feel like I have to put in a bunch of extra work just to get enjoyment out of a novel. So we'll see with this. It's been on my list for a while, and I hope to enjoy it. So that's it. That's it for books. What I've been reading, what I've recently read. I could have gone into deeper into some books on my e-reader that I would like to read as well. But I see that this is again over 30 minutes. I cannot seem to make a video under 30 minutes, and yet still more people are subscribing. You are all insane, and I imagine that one day I'll wake up and find that half of my subscriber count has unsubscribed, and things will go back to normal, and the whole axis of the world will reshift back into its place, and life will be the same. So, crossing my fingers, and I'll see you next time. See ya.